What if, when Hollywood's intense actor and daytime TV's controversial host, what happens when their paths cross and everything goes wrong? You're about to find out, because what went down between Tom Hardy and Joy Behar on The View was absolutely explosive. This wasn't just any celebrity chat. It was a full-on verbal battle that ended with security stepping in and a guest being shown the door.
Before we get into this wild fictional story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think really made this whole thing blow up. Seriously, you'll want to hear every single word of this showdown.
So Tom Hardy took his place in The View's notorious hot seat, likely anticipating a standard round of questions about his latest project, a gritty drama centered on veterans grappling with PTSD. From the intensity in his gaze, it was clear how deeply he connected to the subject matter. That same focus and fire that made him such a magnetic performer also made it obvious this was not someone who took these topics lightly. But Joy Behar had a different kind of interview in mind. As soon as the cameras rolled, she wore that signature smirk, the one fans of the show had come to recognize as a sign that things were about to get uncomfortable. She introduced Tom with what sounded like admiration, gushing about his career and welcoming him warmly. Still, those familiar with Joy's style knew better. A compliment often carried a sharp edge. "Tom, welcome to The View," Joy said, flashing her TV-perfect smile. "I'm a huge fan of your work. Venom, Mad Max, you really have a talent for picking those intense, hyper-masculine roles, don't you?" Tom shifted in his seat, a subtle tension crossing his face. "I choose roles that challenge me," he responded steadily. "To me, it's about exploring depth and emotional complexity, not labels like masculine or feminine." Joy leaned in, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Oh, come on now, Tom. Let's be real. You've built a brand on being the brooding tough guy. Don't you think that kind of portrayal feeds into some outdated ideas about masculinity?" Across the table, Whoopi, Sarah, and the others exchanged quick, knowing glances. This was clearly veering off the expected promotional track. Tom remained composed, but there was a sharpness to his tone. "I think you're reducing those roles far too much. These characters aren't just one-dimensional tough guys. They represent people carrying trauma, searching for belonging. That goes beyond gender." Joy waved her hand with a dismissive chuckle. "But seriously, Tom, playing someone like Bane, a hulking villain who solves problems through brute force, are we really going to call that a nuanced portrayal? Or in Venom, where you literally eat people?" Tom's fingers, once relaxed on the chair's arms, curled tightly. "Have you watched those films, Joy? Bane's more than a brute. He's shaped by systemic injustice. And Eddie Brock in Venom is a journalist exposing corruption. The violence is symbolic. It's about internal battles." "Oh, please," Joy scoffed, her laugh laced with disdain. "You're digging too deep into what are basically flashy, adolescent power fantasies. Let's not pretend latex suits and fight scenes have layers." The mood in the room had turned heavy. Whoopi tried to mediate. "I think what Tom's trying to say is that there's more beneath the surface, something that resonates, and that's what makes his performances so compelling." But Joy pressed on, emboldened. "Here's what I find curious, Tom. You play these tough-as-nails guys on screen, but in person, you're actually soft-spoken. Ever think you're drawn to those roles because you're compensating for something? Is it a kind of wish fulfillment?" That flipped a switch. Tom's tone dropped into that icy register familiar to anyone who had watched his more menacing characters. "Are you seriously analyzing my psychology on national television based on characters I've played? That's wildly unprofessional, even for you." Joy, clearly pleased with herself, pushed further. Did I strike a nerve? I just want to understand what draws male audiences to these violent, domineering fantasy figures. Fantasy figures, Tom echoed, his voice calm but chilling. These characters reflect real pain. Veterans, addicts, trauma survivors. You're trivializing their struggles into comic book tropes. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree about the depth of these action roles. But let's shift gears. Lately, you've spoken out about political issues. Do you really think actors should be steering public conversations on politics? His eyes locked onto her, thoughtful and guarded. This wasn't a casual question. It was bait. Everyone in the room felt it.
If someone has a platform, they should use it to advocate for causes they believe in, he answered evenly. It's not about fame, it's about responsibility. Joy leaned in, voice tightening. But do you even have the background to comment on these things? You're an actor, Tom. You pretend for a living. What makes your opinion any more valid than, say, a school teacher or plumber? Tom's jaw clenched. I never claimed to be more qualified, but I take the time to understand issues before I speak, just like I study characters before portraying them. Joy smirked. Do you really, though? Some of your recent interviews make you sound pretty naive, especially on veterans' mental health. You talk like an expert, but you're not. The room fell silent. Even the stage crew seemed frozen. Tom's face turned stone cold, his voice razor sharp. My father was a veteran, Joy. He battled PTSD for years. I lived through it. So when I talk about these issues, I'm not speaking from a bubble in Hollywood. I'm speaking from lived experience in a broken system. Joy blinked, caught off guard for a split second, but she regrouped quickly. I'm sure that was hard for your family, but personal experience doesn't equal policy expertise. Feeling something doesn't mean you understand the full picture. You're seriously saying lived experience doesn't matter? That people who've endured these things firsthand don't deserve a voice just because they didn't write white papers on it? I'm saying emotional stories don't always lead to smart solutions. We need to think clearly without letting personal trauma cloud judgment. Tom stood slowly, his chair scraping harshly behind him. Personal baggage? Is that what you call watching a loved one drink himself numb every night because the system failed him? Is that how you define holding your father during his nightmares? The co-host began signaling the control room in a panic, but Joy charged forward, oblivious to what she had unleashed. I get that you're emotional, but that's my point. You're too close to see clearly. Too close? When was the last time you walked through a VA hospital, Joy? Spoke with a homeless veteran? Or do you just sit behind this desk passing judgment on people whose pain you've never felt? Joy's face reddened. I don't need to visit a VA hospital to understand national policy. I've interviewed experts. I've read the studies. I don't need a personal sob story to form an educated opinion. A sob story? Tom repeated, now whispering the words with dangerous clarity. You just called my father's suffering a sob story on national television. The air in the studio was thick with tension. The audience was silent. Even the camera crew hesitated, unsure if they should continue filming. Joy may have realized she crossed a line, but instead of walking it back, she pushed harder. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I'm talking about using personal trauma to shut down honest debate. It's manipulative, and frankly, it's beneath you. Manipulative? You invited me here under the guise of discussing my film, then spent the entire segment poking, prodding, and undermining. You dismissed my work, questioned my intelligence, and now you're minimizing my father's trauma, all because it doesn't fit your narrative? And you want to talk about manipulation? Joy's confidence finally started to crack. Still, she didn't retreat. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation about important issues. When someone simply refuses to accept what they shouldn't have, if a real conversation makes you this defensive, maybe you're not ready for it. Defensive? Tom's voice now carried that signature intensity he brought to his darker film roles. Joy, not once have you asked me a sincere question since I sat down.
You've been on the offensive this entire time, trying to cut me down, and now you're acting like I'm the issue for not silently accepting it? The tension in the studio was suffocating. The other co-hosts exchanged anxious glances, clearly searching for a way to de-escalate. But Joy wasn't done. Whoopi stepped in, her tone calm but firm, trying to defuse the growing storm. Let's all take a breath. Maybe we can shift the conversation towards something more productive. Still, Joy pressed on. She had that unmistakable glint in her eyes, confident, convinced she was winning. No, Whoopi, I think this is a necessary discussion. We're addressing how celebrities use their influence, and I believe our audience deserves transparency, both sides of it. Tom turned his gaze back toward her, his expression razor sharp. Both sides? Joy, you haven't presented any side. All you've done is spent 10 straight minutes launching personal jabs under the guise of thoughtful debate. I'm not attacking you personally, Joy insisted, though her tone betrayed uncertainty. I'm challenging your views, your biases. That's what real journalism demands. Journalism? Tom let out a dry, bitter laugh. Is that what this is supposed to be? Because to me, it feels like you're just chasing a viral clip instead of pursuing any meaningful dialogue. A flush crept into Joy's face. Don't question my integrity. I've been doing this longer than you've been acting. I don't need some Hollywood pretty boy from London telling me how to run my show. Even the other hosts visibly winced. Sarah tried stepping in, her voice tentative. Joy, maybe we should— No, Tom cut her off, his voice deepening into that commanding Bane-like resonance. Let her go on. I'm curious what more she has to say about pretty boys from London. Though she knew she'd crossed a line, Joy's pride wouldn't allow retreat. I'm not trying to offend you. I'm saying maybe your viewpoint on these complex issues isn't as grounded as you believe. My perspective, Tom responded slowly, comes from growing up with a father battling demons you'd never comprehend. It comes from talking to injured veterans, from hearing the stories of homeless soldiers in both London and LA. Where's your perspective from, Joy? Interview segments and secondhand reports? I've reported on these issues for decades. I don't have to experience everything firsthand to speak on it accurately. That's not how journalism works. And that's exactly the issue. Tom's voice climbed. You're not aiming to understand. You're exploiting pain to score political points and appear clever at others' expense. Now standing, Joy matched his energy. That's unfair and you know it. I care about these causes. I've donated, raised awareness. Have you? Tom countered. Or have you used veterans as set dressing for your political theater? There's a big difference between caring about people and caring about being seen caring. The air was electric with discomfort. Producers were frantically signaling, unsure whether to cut or continue. Joy looked rattled, her control slipping. You know what your problem is, Tom? She blurted, voice rising. You can't handle criticism. You're used to everyone kissing your ass because you're a movie star, and now you can't deal with someone not dazzled by your fame. My fame? Tom's voice dropped to a chilling calm. Joy, I didn't request this. Your team reached out to mine and asked me here. I came to discuss my work, my causes, and said you've turned this into a cross-examination, and I'm supposed to sit here and take it? You weren't ambushed, Joy insisted. I asked legitimate questions about your career and your political views. If you can't handle that, maybe you should avoid making political statements. Tom stared at her, face impassive. When he finally spoke, it was with deadly calm. You're right, Joy. I can't handle this. I can't sit here while you insult my father's sacrifice, dismiss real suffering, and call it journalism. Cruelty? Joy's voice wavered. I'm not cruel. I'm doing my job, asking hard questions. Your job, Tom said, now standing, should be to inform your viewers. Instead, you use your seat to target people you disagree with. You don't want insight, you want victory. Joy stood too, red-faced and defiant. I'm not a bully. I ask tough questions. If that rattles you, Maybe you're in the wrong industry." "You just called what I do plain dress-up," Tom said, his voice a whisper filled with steel. The studio fell into a stunned silence. Whoopi waved frantically to producers off camera, while Joy froze, realizing she may have gone too far, offending not just Tom, but every actor who's ever sat on her couch. "I didn't mean—" "No, you meant it," Tom cut her off. "You believe my craft, my effort to tell human stories, is childish nonsense." "Tom, please, just let me explain. You know what's really interesting, Joy?" Tom's voice grew steadier. "You spend your career analyzing others, but what have you created? What light have you added to the world beyond negativity?" Joy opened her mouth, but couldn't form a reply. I inform people. I spark conversation." "You start fights," Tom corrected. "You stir chaos for ratings. You tear down others to boost yourself. And when challenged, you hide behind your title." "I'm not hiding," she insisted. "I'm just doing my job. If you can't face tough questions—" Tom gave a joyless laugh. "Tough questions? You've avoided every meaningful question about my work, my experience. This whole interview has been bait for your next trending clip. Well, congrats, you got it." The control room was in full panic, but Joy was locked in. "You're being theatrical," she said, trying to reset. "I asked about your roles, your views, fair topics." "No," Tom replied. "You ridiculed my choices, belittled my experience, and insulted my profession. That's not journalism. That's an attack." The rest of the hosts looked frozen, eager for this nightmare to end. Sarah made a final attempt. "Maybe a quick break would help." "No," Joy said. "I want to finish. Tom, if you can't handle critique, you shouldn't be so public." Tom stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You think this is about my ego? I've faced plenty of critics, but this was a personal ambush masked as an interview." "I'm having a discussion," Joy insisted, her tone becoming shrill. "Defensive?" Tom murmured. "You've been systematically attacking everything I care about. What did you want me to do? Smile and take it?" Everyone held their breath. Joy leaned in once more. "You know what, Joy?" Tom said, his voice now echoing through the studio with raw authority. "I've had enough of this. Enough of your smugness, your personal digs, and your utter lack of professionalism." Joy snapped back. "You call that professional? You're throwing a tantrum on live TV because you can't handle a few questions." "Questions?" Tom shot back. "You insulted my career, my father, and my intelligence. That's not questioning, it's cruelty." Joy fired back, her voice breaking. "If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you should go back to your little fantasy movies where everyone worships you." Tom's face hardened into stone. His voice turned to ice. "Fantasy movies where everyone worships me?" he repeated. "Joy, you don't know the first thing about me. You sit here every day tearing people apart, calling it journalism. You're nothing but a bully with a platform." Joy straightened. "Don't call me a bully. I ask real questions about real issues." "Real questions?" Tom barked. "You haven't asked one sincere question. All you've done is dig for sound bites." "I'm not attacking you," Joy screamed, losing all composure. "You called my work plain dress-up, dismissed my father's pain, and mocked my voice. That's not debate, that's cruelty." Whoopi motioned desperately to cut, but Joy wouldn't stop. "You're just another entitled celebrity who thinks your fame makes you wise." Tom gave a cold laugh. "Entitled? You tried to humiliate me on national TV, and I'm the entitled one? I'm holding you accountable," Joy shouted. "You Hollywood types need a reality check." Tom's voice lowered to a deadly calm. Talking about veterans, mental health, and helping others is stepping out of line? Joy breathed hard, realization dawning, but too late. You don't understand the issues. You're just an actor. Tom's glare was withering. You're right. I'm just an actor, but I'd rather be that than a bitter person who gets paid to tear people down. Joy turned red and white at once. How dare you? How dare I what? Point out your hostility? That you ambushed me for views? I'm not unprofessional, Joy screamed. You're the one being dramatic. Defensive? Tom shouted. You've attacked me since I walked in. What did you expect? I expected professionalism. Professionalism? Tom shook his head. You haven't asked a real question all day. You just wanted a scene. Joy snapped. You know what? I'm done. I'm sick of spoiled celebrities disrespecting me. Disrespecting you? Tom blinked in disbelief. You've disrespected me for 30 minutes straight. Get him out, Joy screamed. I want him off my set now. You're serious? Tom asked, stunned. I said get him out, she repeated, voice cracking. I won't take this abuse. Tom looked to security, then shook his head. You know what, Joy? This says it all. You push someone until they snap, then act like the victim. Just go, she said, trembling. Just get out. Tom nodded to security and the hosts, calm again. I don't need an escort. I know the way. He paused at the set's edge, turned back once. You should be ashamed of yourself. You really should. As Tom exited, Joy shouted, Don't come back. You're banned from this show. Tom stopped. Joy, that's not a threat. That's a promise I'll keep.